Hi guys, welcome to the tutorial for the long dachshund blanket. Thanks for being interested in making this pattern. It means a lot to me that you would even click on this video. And if you're starting this project right now, please do not skip over this intro. It has a lot of information that is very important for anyone making this. I have a whole list right here. So let's dive right in. First, we're going to cover the materials that we need. You need two different colors, the color of the background and the color of the dog itself. For the color of this background, I use this nice muted teal. You'll need 860 yards of that color, or 786 meters. For the color of the dog, you'll need 1,100 yards or 1,006 meters. I use this nice off-white for this. If you want to use the exact same yarn that I did to get as similar a result as possible, I have a kit with Line Brand available, link in the description. It contains all the yarn that you need and a free printable version of this pattern to accompany this tutorial. Anyways, you will also need a 5mm hook or whatever hook is best for you to match gauge. You will also need bobbin holders. I just used bobby pins. You can use whatever you have lying around your house. No need to buy something new. So the gauge for this pattern isn't super important, but if your gauge is too small or too big, you're going to end up with a blanket that's way smaller or bigger than mine, which also affects the amount of yarn that you need. The standard size blanket is 35.4 inches or 88 centimeters wide, and then 48 inches or 122 centimeters tall. So the gauge that I had in a 4-inch by 4-inch section of this pattern, I have 17 inches and 9.5 rows for 4 by 4 inches. So to make a gauge swatch, you should like chain 20, so to have a few extra stitches, and then work 12 rows in double crochet. Then you measure the inner 4 inches of that swatch to get an accurate measurement. If your gauge is too small, meaning that you have more than 17 inches or 9.5 rows in that swatch, then you should size up a hook. And if your gauge is too big, meaning that you have less than 17 stitches or 9.5 rows in your swatch, then you should size down a hook. Another important part of this blanket is the color work, and a lot of elements are added to this pattern because of it. The only thing that you need to know for this pattern going in is how to chain and how to double crochet. But if you're a beginner learning how to do color work, or if you're more advanced and just want to make this pattern, this is perfect because I will also teach you how to do the more advanced things like change colors as we go along. I do my color work with bobbins, so for each color section in this blanket, like for example each leg on here, I create a little thing of yarn to use so I don't have to carry my yarn all the way across the blanket. If this sounds confusing and you can't conceptualize that right now, that's totally fine. Just follow what I do whenever we get to the actual tutorial. Essentially, all it means is that you'll have less ends to sew in later, so trust me, it is a very good thing. We'll be using two different charts, one for the bottom leg section and one for the head section. Please download those before you begin to follow along on your own time. I messed up and printed off the wrong one for the legs when I was recording this tutorial, so some of my numbers in that part is wrong, but I added text on the screen to correct my mistakes, so just follow the text part and you should be good. You'll also be following your own chart, so please download the chart, follow it on your own. I also mentioned this in the tutorial, but in the chart, 1 pixel represents 2 double crochet stitches. I know that doesn't mean anything to you right now, but just memorize that for later, that 1 pixel equals 2 double crochet stitches. This blanket also has 117 rows total. It's not the biggest blanket you'll ever see by any means. There are a lot larger patterns. It's like a comfortable throw size for your couch or whatever, but it's probably going to take you a week or 2 minimum to complete. That's just the reality of the project. If you're a beginner, you can totally do it. It's super beginner friendly. I just wouldn't do it as my very first project. Last thing, I swear, if you aren't vibing with the video tutorial or you want something to read or hold in your hands, the written pattern is available in many formats. It's up for free on my blog with ads, but if you want a printable, nice looking PDF version, you can go to my website, Etsy, Ribbler, whatever, and it'll be available for purchase there. You can also get the PDF version for free as part of the kit with Line Brand that I mentioned earlier, which also includes all of the yarn that you need. That is the exact same kind that I use. So if you're interested in any of this, all the links are in the description. And with that, that's my whole intro. Let's get started. All right, to begin, grab your color 1, your background color, the color that is not the dog, and make a slip knot. I make my slip knot by taking the end of my yarn and twisting it around my finger twice, then taking the back loop of that twist, pulling it over the front, then taking the front one and pulling it all the way over my finger, and then tightening that, and that's how I make my slip knot. If you make yours a different way, that is totally fine. But our first order of business is going to be chaining 159 chains, which I know seems very tedious, but I think this is the hardest part of the pattern. Whenever you do this, you also don't want to make your chains too loose. Whenever I have a ton to make, I tend to go way too fast and make my loops way too big, and then that affects the gauge of my project. So just make sure that you're keeping your chains at a normal size that you can work into later. So chain 159, and then I'll meet you back once we have that initial chain. All right, now we have our chain that is 159 chains long. I know it's super long, but aren't you glad that it's all done with? Now we are going to work row 1. So to do that, we are going to skip our first 2 chains and then make a double crochet into that 3rd chain. And then we are going to make a double crochet into every single chain down the row until we have worked a double crochet into every chain. The 2 chains that you skipped initially to work into the 3rd also count as its own stitch. So once you're done, you will have 158 stitches total. So just work a double crochet into every chain that you just made, and I'll meet you back once we're done with that. All right, we have now made a double crochet into every single stitch for a total of 158 stitches, including that initial chain 2 that we skipped. That counts as your 158th stitch, or your first stitch, however you like to see it. So to begin row 2, we are going to chain 2, then we are going to turn our work, and then we are going to work a double crochet into this next stitch, but we are not going to complete the final pull through of it because we are going to switch colors to color 2. So grab your color 2, the end of your color 2, and you didn't complete the last pull through of your last stitch. So to complete the last pull through, just kind of put your yarn near there and pull your color 2 through with a little bit of a tail for color 2. So I'm going to set my work down, and then I am going to tie this tail from color 2 onto my working yarn for color 1. Just gonna tie it there, and I'm gonna tie it really flush to the stitch, so kind of right next to where we left off, or right next to where the rest of the working yarn begins. And I'm going to tie it twice. I'm gonna double knot it. Then I'm going to pull my yarn taut just to make sure that it's flush to that stitch. And then to do the rest of row 2, we are going to leave our working yarn of color 1 behind, and then I like to crochet over my ends as I go, so I'm going to hold this end to that bottom row as I begin to double crochet with color 2. So I'm just going to work a double crochet in color 2 into every single stitch. Again, we left our working yarn behind over here, we left our color 1 behind over there, and we are going to do this until we have about 4 stitches left on this row. So just double crochet into every single stitch with color 2 until you have 4 or 5, just a couple stitches left in this row. All right, I am now a few stitches from the end, so I am going to double crochet until I have 2 stitches left, including that initial chain 2 that we skipped over. We have that, and then we have our first double crochet. So those are the last 2 stitches in this row. And then you'll notice that our color 1 is still attached over here. So I'm just going to make a bobbin pretty quick for that so we can keep some yarn over here to work with whenever we return to those stitches. So I'm just going to unwind a good amount of yarn from my skein, or my ball that I rolled up from a bunch of skeins. I don't really know how much. This is never something super accurate, but this is about the amount of yarn that I'm putting into this skein. You never really have to worry if you're doing too much or too little, because if you do too little, you can just make a new bobbin and attach it on, or if you're doing too much, you can just cut off the bobbin once you're done using it and then reattach it at a later point in the project, or save that yarn for a totally different project. So yeah, this is what I've pulled out for this bobbin. So I'm going to cut the working end, the one that's attached to the skein. Then I'm going to take that end, and I'm going to take 3 fingers, and I'm going to start wrapping that yarn around these 3 fingers. I'm just going to wrap this probably, again, this isn't super accurate, it's always a guesstimation, but probably around 30 to 40 times, and then I'm going to kind of pinch that in the middle, slip it off these 3 fingers, and then I'm going to start wrapping the yarn around the middle of that. And this is sort of how we make a bobbin. You'll need to make a few of these along the way for color changes and just to manage the different legs and things that you have to make for the colorwork parts of this pattern. And also whenever we do the border stitches, you'll need to make these, but there's really, I'm making it sound like a lot of work. It's not a lot of work. So we have this bobbin here. And I personally just use regular bobby pins to pin it to my work. I think there are like actual bobbin pinners you can get, but I just use bobby pins because it's what I have lying around. So I'm going to go into the top of this second stitch. I'm just going to insert my bobby pin there, and then I'm going to hold the bobbin flush to my work and then just insert it anywhere into that bobbin to kind of hold it there so that yarn doesn't get in the way whenever we're trying to crochet on the rest of our project. And so I'm going to return to these final 2 stitches that we have, and I'm actually going to undo this final pull through that I did because we're going to want to change back to color 1 over here. I'm going to grab my color 1 again, and then I'm going to pull it through that final pull through. So we have that little end there, and I'm going to tie that end to my working yarn of color 2. Gonna double knot it just to make sure it's secure. Then I'm going to tug up my loop of color 1 just to make sure it's nice and secure there. And then again, I'm not going to work over this working end that we did. I'm just going to work over the end that we created of the color we changed to. And then I'm going to double crochet into the next stitch with color 1. And then I'm going to double crochet again into our final stitch with color 1. Again, I'm crocheting over my end. You don't have to if you don't want to. Then to start row 3, which is the first row that we're going to be working our chart, which if you want to follow along with the chart in front of you, which I highly recommend doing, you can download it at the link in my description. There will just be a nice little image that you can pull up and reference instead of trying to look with this little chart that I have printed out here on the video. But just go download it real quick so we can go look at the chart together. And so to start row 3, I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to turn my work. So an important part of this pattern is that we have 4 border stitches on each side. So we're always going to have 2 double crochet in color 1 and then 2 double crochet in color 2 as our 4 border stitches. On the other side, you'll see that it is the exact same. We have 2 double crochet on one side and 2 double crochet of the other side of the other color. So we're always going to have these set of 4 border stitches. So I'm going to work those 4 border stitches. So we already did our first one with our chain 2, that always counts as our first double crochet. Then I'm going to double crochet into the next stitch, and I'm going to not complete my final pull through. And then I'm going to take this yarn that we left behind and then just sort of pull it up here. You'll notice that we created a length of yarn over here. We are going to crochet over that as well for our next 2 stitches. I'm also going to crochet over this working end of the yarn because I don't really want to put another bobbin over here because we're going to work this color again after our next 2 stitches in color 2. I'm going to crochet over that length we created and over my working end of color 1. I'm going to make a double crochet. I'm going to make 1 more double crochet and not complete the final pull through. And I will complete the final pull through with the working color of color 1. And so now we're going to start working our chart stitches. So you'll notice that the first row of the chart is just all of color 1. So I am just going to work all of color 1, the complete row. I'm going to leave my color 2 behind because I'll be using that for the border stitches. And I'm just going to crochet with color 1 into every single stitch until I have 4 stitches left. Again, we are leaving the working end of color 2 behind as we go, and we are just crocheting with color 1, and I will meet you whenever we have about 4 stitches left in this row. All right, we have 4 stitches left in our 3rd row, so I'm going to set my work down, and then I'm going to unpin this bobby pin, just gonna push it back out there to leave my bobbin free to work with. But then we are going to have to get more yarn of color 2 to work with to create a bobbin over here. So I'm going to return to where we left it over here, and I'm going to do the same process I did for the other bobbin where I just pull out a bunch of yarn from my skein or from my working yarn. Again, this is not an exact amount. This is just about the amount that I'm going to do. If I had to estimate, I would say it's probably around 40 to 50 yards. But again, that's not a precise number. So I'll cut the end from my working end, and then I'll take that and I'll wrap it around three fingers a bunch of times. I feel like I'm probably about halfway through the amount of yarn that I pulled out. And I'm going to pinch it in the middle, slip it off my fingers, keep that pinch, and then wrap around the middle with the rest of my yarn. It's a pretty quick process once you get used to it, so if you're struggling with it a tiny bit, that is totally fine. So I'm going to hold it flush to where it was at, then I'm going to insert it into that second stitch, my bobby pin into that second stitch, and then straight into the bobbin and secure it just like that. So I am actually not just going to normally attach this end of the yarn as I would normally do if I was working another big color section. but this isn't going to be a big color section. This is just one of my border stitches. So I'm just going to take that same working end from my skein and start the bobbin process just from that. So I'm going to start winding it around my fingers a bunch of times. Again, this is not a precise number, and it doesn't need to be. Probably doing it around 30 to 40 times until I feel I have a comfortable amount of yarn. Then I'm going to pinch it in the middle and then wrap the yarn around that middle a whole bunch of times until I feel I have come to a reasonable size for my bobbin, and then I'm going to cut that. And we are going to use this bobbin with the 4 stitches that we have left. So I'm going to take that working end over here and attach this color to prepare for our next color change the same way we have. And then I'm going to take that end and tie it flush to the working end of the previous color. Then pull our pull through pretty taut. And then I'm going to leave this end behind, our color 1 end behind from the main part that we are working the chart with. Then crochet over this end. I'm going to, you guessed it, make 2 double crochet in color 2, not complete my final pull through of that set. And I'm going to continue working over this end, but take the working end of my bobbin, pull through, and then I'm going to again leave this one behind over here. And I'm going to crochet over the length of yarn we created whenever we pulled through as I make my first double crochet. Then we are working into the top of that initial chain 2. So I'm going to get my hook in there and then make that second double crochet. Then I'm going to chain 2 to start row 4, turn my work once again, and then you guessed it, we are going to work these border stitches. So I'm going to insert my hook into that second stitch since our chain 2 count as the first stitch, not complete my final pull through, take the end of my color 1 bobbin, pull it through instead, and then crochet over the length it created, leaving this bobbin's color or working yarn behind, just like that, not completing my final pull through once again to get back to my main color section, and then crochet over the length that created for a couple stitches. And now we are going to start working the chart when it's not just one color all the way through, which is pretty exciting. Generally, you work the chart right to left, left to right for the next row, then right to left for the next row, and so on. So I'm going to say that we worked from right to left for our first row. So now we are working from left to right for our second row. And so in this chart, whenever we translate it to actual stitching, each pixel counts as 2 double crochet. So working from left to right, we need to determine how many double crochet we're doing in color 1. My background color is that white color, that's color 1. So we need to determine how many double crochet we're doing. So I'm going to count how many pixels there are. So that was 48 stitches until our first color change, or sorry, 48 pixels until our first color change, which is 96 double crochet before we get there. So we have already made 3 of those 96 double crochet. And so I'm just going to make 96 total double crochet, not including our 4 border stitches. We don't count those in the chart at all. So I'm going to meet you guys back whenever we have created our 96 double crochet in color 1 in the chart section. Also, just to get your bobbins out of the way, I highly recommend pinning them right back to where they once were. So I'm going to roll it back up, hold it flush to my stitches, and then grab my bobby pin, put it in the top of that second stitch, then pin it there into the bobbin itself. Then I'm going to do the same with my color 2 bobbin, just roll it up right until it is flush with my work, go into that second stitch, and pin the bobbin right to my work. There we go, and then I'm going to make my 96 double crochet. Alright, so we have made our 116 stitches in the chart section of this row in color 1. So I already made my bobbin for color 2 before I switched to it. I'm going to get a little length of yarn out and then do the same procedure to change colors as I have been doing. In my 116 stitch, I didn't complete the final pull through, so I'm going to pull through with my new color and then tie the yarn together, flush to the stitch. And then I'm going to look at my chart again when we only have 3 pixels, so only 6 stitches to do in color 2. So I'm going to grab hold of my yarn, and I am going to crochet over this working end as well, since I don't want to make a whole new bobbin since we only have 6 stitches to crochet over for most of these rows. So we are going to crochet over both ends. I'm going to make 6 stitches in color 2 to start our first little dog leg. And on my 6th stitch, I'm going to not complete the final pull through, then switch back to color 1 and crochet until my final border stitches. After I've made a few stitches, I am also going to pin this bobbin back. So the same as we have been doing, insert it into that last stitch that it was used on, hold this flush to the work, then insert that bobbin. Then I'm going to finish my double crochets in color 1 till we come to our 4 border stitches. So we are going to work these 4 the same way that we always have. I'm going to pull through from my bobbin. I already unpinned them before I got to this section, obviously. Then I'm going to work those 2 stitches. I'm also going to work over this yarn since I'm using it as my border stitch yarn on this side. I'm going to drop that and not complete my final pull through. I'm going to pull through with the color I'm changing to, then work my next 2 double crochet. Then I'm going to start row 5 by chaining 2 and turning my work. Then I'm going to make my double crochet for my border stitch, not do the final pull through, then make my next 2 stitches. Again, you're crocheting over this length of yarn, and I'm going to crochet over this yarn again because it's my border stitch yarn and the yarn that I'm using to work the chart. So in row 3 you can see that I'm basically just crocheting until I get back to that bobbin. Then I'm going to make 4 double crochet for these 2 pixels. Then we have 5 pixels, so that's 10 more double crochet in color 1. And then I'm going to make another bobbin for this next leg that we're working, this 6 double crochet. So in action, I'm going to do all double crochet until I reach the bobbin. After I make a few stitches in the chart section of the blanket, I am also going to lay my work down again and go back to pin this bobbin, the border stitch bobbin, to the side. I just find it pretty difficult to pin the bobbins whenever you're actually right up next to them, so I like to work a few stitches before I go back and repin it to keep it out of my way while I crochet. So I've come back to my bobbin now, and this is where I'm at. We are working from right to left on row 3. So in this row I am going to only complete 4 double crochet in our color 2 from this bobbin. So I'm going to pull through and I'm going to crochet over this end just because, again, I don't want to make another bobbin to crochet over since it's only a few stitches and the color probably won't poke through. So I just made my 4 double crochet. Then I'm going to pull my other yarn through again and keep on crocheting. I think we had 10 stitches between this leg and the place where we're going to start our next leg. So I'm going to create those 10 stitches. So I just made my 10th stitch not pulling through on the final stitch because I am going to add a bobbin for this leg. And so I already made the bobbin and I'm just going to attach it like we have been doing for everything else. Just to double check, we have a total of 6 stitches to make in color 2 here since there are 3 pixels. So I'm going to make those 6 stitches. I'm going to crochet over both the end and the working yarn of color 1 that I have. Again, because I don't want to make a whole new bobbin that I have to attach and detach every single time I want to work color 1, just because the color's not going to show that bad. I'm also going to go back and pin my bobbin for the first leg over here, and that's basically it for row 3 of the chart. I'm basically going to crochet until I reach the end again, and I will meet you guys back over there once we finish the last couple stitches on the chart. Alright, when we get back to this other side, I am going to unpin both my bobbins. Sorry for the sound my hook makes, I know it's not fun to listen to, but I've just unpinned those, and then I'm going to work my final 3 stitches in the chart section, and then I'm going to pull through with my first border stitch, and then I'm going to crochet over the length it created, not working through my last pull through. I'm going to pull through with my next color, work over the end that was created when we pulled through, and then work my final double crochet into that initial chain 2. So we have now completed 5 rows already, which feels a lot faster than it should be. This is a pretty fast pattern in my opinion. But to start row 6 of the blanket in total, and now we're going to be working row 4 of the chart. We are going to do our normal chain 2 and turn, and then I'm going to work my border stitches. Then we are going to pull through with our first chart color, and I'm going to work my first couple stitches. Then I'm going to look at my chart. It looks like in row 4 that we are basically crocheting until we get over here. So I'm going to do all double crochet in color 1 until we return back to our initial bobbin. Alright, so we are coming back up on the original bobbin, so I am going to unpin it, then unwind it a little bit, and then I'm going to crochet until I get to that yarn. If we are working from left to right on this row, I'm going to crochet over those first 2 stitches, since that's 1 pixel translates to 2 stitches, and then I'm going to work 4 stitches in that color, pulling through on this stitch, and then I'm going to crochet over the end of this bobbin until I need to pull it through. So I just pulled it up there to crochet over it, and I'm going to crochet over it again, did not complete that final pull through, so I can switch to it. I'm going to crochet over my working end of color 1 as well while I complete these stitches in color 2, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to pull it a little bit because I think it can show in the back sometimes if you don't pull it tight enough. And I'm going to switch over to this color again, do a couple stitches, and then look at what I need to do for this row on my chart. So we're here in this row, so I'm going to do another 10 stitches to represent those 5 pixels, then just another 2 stitches in color 2. I'm going to unpin this bobbin while I'm at it, do my 10 stitches, getting my other lengths of yarn out of the way. This is why we do bobbins. It can totally become a mess if you leave too many unpinned at the same time. Not do my final pull through before the stitch I need to change colors to, and then pull through here. Then crochet over both this little end for my first stitch and my working yarn for color 1. Do 4 stitches and then pull through for my return to color 1. Do a couple stitches in color 1 before I go back to pin my bobbins again. Oh, it looks like this bobbin is running a little bit low. At this point you can kind of just leave the yarn loose, but I'm going to try and salvage it and just kind of wind it around itself very messily. Again, the whole bobbin thing is not a very precise one, but it's one that we figure it out as it goes. So I'm going to pin it here. I'm going to go to this other bobbin, rewind it, and then pin it again to get it out of my way. And then just like the chart tells me to, I'm going to just crochet in color 1 until the end. So I have returned to my border stitches again. You can see that I unpinned the bobbin that I have for the color 2 border stitches. So I'm just going to pull this through. And again, I'm using this color for these border stitches as well. So I'm just going to crochet over that working yarn as I go, making my 4 border stitches the exact same way that we have been doing on this side for the entire blanket. So to start my next row, I'm going to do our chain 2 and turn. Then I'm going to do our border stitches once again the exact same way as we have been doing. And I'm going to pull that through and then start crocheting a couple stitches before I go back to pin that bobbin. And then I'm going to have another look at my chart to see what we're doing in this row. This is row 5. So we're basically going to crochet until we reach that bobbin again and then make 6 double crochet in color 2. So I'm going to crochet until I reach that bobbin. So we've come back to that stitch and I've unpinned my bobbin so I can pull that color through. Then I'm going to crochet 6 double crochet in color 2, continuing to crochet over my working yarn of color 1 so I can access it once I've done that 6th stitch. Pull through with my color 1. And then it looks like we are just making 4 stitches again in color 2 once we reach our next bobbin. So I'm just going to crochet until I reach that next bobbin. And so we've reached that bobbin again, and I'm going to unwind this a little bit so we can use it. I'm going to pull that through and then make 4 double crochet in color 2. And then I'm going to pull through this color again, make a couple double crochet, just so I can have some length between the bobbin and the current working stitch whenever I go back to pin those bobbins. I don't know if I will pin this bobbin this time. I might just leave that sort of hanging there. So I'm just going to pin that. And then it looks like we are going to start a big colorwork section of color 2. It looks like I have 6 pixels, so 12 stitches before I start that. And then since this is such a big color section, I'm not going to make a sort of bobbin for it. I'm just going to take the entire skein that I've been working with, this big ball that I've rolled some of my skeins up into, and attach my yarn just from that. I don't think I'll need to make any other bobbins while I'm working with this skein, so hopefully my border stitch bobbins will hold out until I'm finished, but I've attached that yarn and I'm basically just going to work this color until the end of my chart section. I'm going to leave this color behind since we won't be needing that color to work our border stitches, and we'll basically just be coming back to work it in our next row. And then I'm just going to do a double crochet into every single stitch until the end of our row. And probably you're getting the hang of the blanket by now and you don't really need me to do a row by row tutorial. You know how to change colors, you know when to add a bobbin and when not to. So I'm just going to quickly go over what we do at the end of the row until I release you to finish this chart on your own. So I'm going to leave my stitches here. Basically, whenever we get back to this side of the blanket, after I've already done my double crochets until the end of this, you'll notice that the inner two border stitches are going to be the same color as what we're crocheting with over this end. So basically what I'm going to do before I even get there, I'm going to unpin this bobbin and then unravel it a little bit. And then I'm going to cut a little length for myself and just leave this bobbin off to the side for whenever I need to reattach one or something. And whenever I work down this line, I'm going to crochet over this end and just use that color continuously for my border stitches as well, kind of as we've been doing on the other side to use this for our border stitches. So basically there's not going to be any difference between our chart and our border stitches on this side while we're working this side of the chart. So I'm just going to not have any separate bobbin for the border stitches. And yeah, that's how I sort of deal with that issue. But for now, I will basically leave you to work the chart on your own. If you don't feel like you have a grasp on it, that's totally fine. Ask me any questions that you have. But I have total confidence in you. You know how to use bobbins, you know how to manage them, you know how to add them, you know how to change colors and everything. Probably the only other bobbin that I'm going to do is one for this tail. Whenever you're finished with the bobbin, like I just showed you, just clip a little end off of it for you to crochet over in the next row. Just kind of hold it to that stitch and crochet over it. But for now, I will leave you to work this chart, and I will meet you back whenever we are done with our fun little legs chart. All right, I lied. I have one more thing to show you. I've come to this point. We're working this row 6 of the chart from left to right, and so I'm going to crochet over this end of the yarn as I go. I know that can probably be a little bit confusing if you haven't done that before. I think we did that earlier for one of the other things, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that if you have working yarn that you're pulling up and over, but it doesn't start until further down that row, just crochet over it as you go. So I'm going to leave this working yarn out, and then I'm going to crochet until I work that middle leg, this middle leg. So just crochet it up until my next color change. I'm going to change colors and crochet over the working end of color 1 as well as I do that. And then this is also what I wanted to show you guys. You can see that as we're working from left to right, we will have to pull this yarn over 2 stitches whenever we get to that bobbin. So I'm going to just unpin it now as we are getting ready to work over there. Then I'm going to crochet. So in this row, you also have to pull this yarn over, basically, since we're working it from left to right. Basically what I'm going to do is pull this yarn through as we would normally do, and then I'm going to crochet over the length that we created once again and my working color 1 yarn. So that's basically all that I wanted to show you guys, is how to pull that yarn over or how to crochet over it if the pattern or the chart calls for it. So continue to work the chart, and I will meet you back for real this time again whenever we have finished all the rows of the chart. All right, I have just finished working the 18th row of the chart and the 20th row of the blanket total. Very exciting. We are probably about a 5th or 6th of the way through the blanket at this point. So our last 2 rows, we're basically just doing the 4 border stitches on either side of the blanket, and you just crocheted with color 1 all the way between those border stitches. So we're basically just going to do that 3 more times. So you're going to have a total, after you finish the last row of the dog, you're going to have a total of 5 rows of crocheting just with color 1 in the chart section with the 4 border stitches on either side. All right, we have done our 3 extra rows of the 4 border stitches on either side with the totality of just color 1 in between. So next we are going to make another set of 10 rows of color 2. Again, with the 4 border stitches on either side, that never changes. So I'm going to show you how I plan on doing that. I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work, and then I'm going to do the border stitches as per usual. This is the very end of my bobbin, so I don't even know if it's going to be able to complete these 2 border stitches. I'm gonna try. So I'm just gonna leave that there, and I'm gonna grab my main skein yarn and just tie on a new length here. Since I'm going to be mainly working with it anyway across the entirety of this row, I want to have a nice big skein to work from. But this stitch, which was carrying my main skein yarn across all of these rows, I am just going to clip a nice little length off of it here, and then I'm going to continue to crochet with my color 2, obviously, and then I'm going to pull this length up so I can crochet over it. I'm going to pull a loop up after crocheting over it, and then I'm going to tie it once or twice to that length, again pretty flush to the stitch. Then I'm going to fold it over so I can continue to work it against the stitches as I work my color 2, and then I'm just going to continue to do this for basically 10 rows of color 2, and I will meet you guys back whenever we are done with our set of 10 rows of color 2. This is our first big stripe, pretty exciting to see it work up, so I will meet you guys back whenever we have it all finished. Alright, we have just finished our section of 10 rows of color 2, bringing us to a total of 33 rows, pretty exciting. And so basically what we're going to do is we are going to do 8 rows in color 1 instead, in this sort of middle section. Again, working our 4 border stitches on either side. So I'll just show you how I'm going to set up that row. I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work, and then I'm going to do my typical border stitches, and then I'm going to take my main skein of color 1, attach it right over here just as we have been doing for any border stitch, or if you have had to create a new bobbin for any part of this color work, including the border stitches, this is probably what you've been doing, but I'm going to leave my color 2 behind and then start working row 1 of the 8 rows of row 1 that we are going to work. I'm also obviously going to make a bobbin for this side of the border stitches. It's currently attached to my big main skein, but I won't put you guys through having to watch me make more bobbins. I'll make a bobbin for this side, and then for the other side's border stitches, and then I will be ready to go to make another 8 rows in color 1. And I will meet you back whenever we have that done. Alright, we just finished our next set of 8 rows of color 1 for a total of 41 rows. Pretty exciting. We're making very good progress on this. So basically what we're going to do is make another set of 10 rows of color 2. You already know how to do this. It'll be super fast. Go watch a movie while you do it or something. And I will meet you back here once we have done another 10 rows of color 2, again with our 4 border stitches on either side. Don't forget that. Alright, we have just finished our section of 10 rows of color 2, so you guessed it, we are going to repeat this section of 8 rows of color 1. Again, I really don't want you to forget it. I know it might be annoying at this point, but make sure you do the 4 border stitches on either side for each of these rows. So go ahead and do 8 rows of color 1 just like you did for this section, and I will meet you back once we are done with that. Alright, we have just finished our 8 rows of color 1, and you guessed it, we are going to make yet another stripe by doing another 10 rows of color 2. Again, make sure to do your 4 border stitches on each side. It can be easy to forget sometimes, so just make sure you're still doing that. Alright, we've just finished our 3rd set of 10 rows of color 2, and so you guessed it, we are going to do our final set of 8 rows of color 1 again. Then after that, we are only going to have one more of these long 10 row stripes, then we're going to work on the final head chart. But just for now, do 8 more rows of color 1 and make sure you do the 4 stitches of the border stitches on each side of the row, and I will meet you back after we have completed 8 rows of color 1. Push through, you can do it. This is your final set of 8 rows for color 1. Alright, we have just finished our last set of 10 rows of color 2, and so before we start our final chart, we are going to do 3 rows in color 1 again, just to get set up for that and to make a little bit of space between our last stripe and the actual chart itself. So go ahead and just make 3 more rows in color 1 again, including your 4 border stitches on either side, and I will meet you back there and then we will start the chart. Yay! Alright, we just did our 3 rows of color 1, so now we will start looking at our head chart. You should have this downloaded. If you don't already, it will be at the link in the description for you to have easy access so you don't have to kind of stare at it on this video. But we are going to work row 1 of the chart from right to left, which just looks like another row of color color 1 all the way through, again with our our 4 border stitches on either side. So we're going to basically just work row 1, which is basically what we just did, just adding another row of color 1 onto this blanket, and I'll meet you guys back after we are done with that. Alright, we just worked row 1 of our chart from left to right, including our 4 border stitches on either side. So now we are going to work row 2 of the chart from left to right. I'm going to chain 2, then turn my work, then do my 4 border stitches as per usual. I'm going to crochet a few more double crochet, and then I'm going to look at the chart to see when I am going to attach my next bobbin. I've already pre-made it ready to attach. So it looks like we have 5, 10, 15, that's 15 pixels, so 30 double crochet before I'm going to attach my bobbin, change colors to do these 6 stitches. So I'm going to work 30 double crochet in this row. Alright, I'm completing my 30th stitch here, so I'm not going to complete that final pull through because we are changing colors in order to follow the chart. So I'm going to grab my bobbin and change colors exactly as we have been. So I've attached my new color, and then it's only, I think, 6 stitches that I'm going to make, so I'm also going to carry over my color 1, just crochet over it as I go so I can readily access it for the rest of the chart. And that's basically it for this row. I'm just going to finish out with color 1 the entire way. Again, if you already know how to read charts and you know how to apply it in crochet, just go ahead and skip this part. I'm just going to do the first couple rows with you guys. So you probably already know how to do that from the legs chart, but if you just want a little extra reassurance and something to follow along with, this is what this is here for. So I'm just going to crochet with color 1 for the rest of this row. Alright, we are back at our bobbin, which represents this little leg. So we are on row 3 now, which means we have only 4 double crochet to make on top of this one. So I'm going to finish this final double crochet, not complete the final pull through, so I can pull the bobbin color up, and then I'm going to crochet over this as well. I'm going to carry over my color 1 as I make these 4 double crochet to continue working on that little dachshund leg. And then I'm going to pull this color back through and crochet a few double crochet. And then I'm going to look at this again because in row 3 we are also adding the bobbin for the second leg, and it looks like there are 3 pixels, so 6 stitches in between the second row of our leg and the first row of the new leg. So I'm going to make 6 double crochet. I already have 4, so I'm going to make 2 more, and then attach my bobbin that I already made off screen because I think watching it being made on screen is pretty boring once you know how to do it. I'm going to attach my color, make sure I double knot it, and then this is 3 pixels, so 6 double crochet in color 2 that I'm making. Again, I'm carrying over color 1 as I go just to make sure I can access it on the other side, and then finish out this row with only color 1 like the chart says. Alright, I have just finished out the rows, including my 4 border stitches. So now we are going to work row 4 of the chart from left to right for our next row. So I am going to chain 2 and turn my work. And then since we're working from left to right, it looks like, again, I'll just be crocheting until I hit that bobbin again. So I'm going to work my 4 border stitches. So I'm just going to, for this row, row 4 of the chart, crochet until I get back to that leg. Alright, I've crocheted until I've gotten back to this bobbin, and we are working left to right, so it's looking like I will be crocheting over the first 2 double crochet with color 1 still. So I'm going to hold this little part of the bobbin up and crochet over those first 2 stitches, and then pull my color 2 through. Then I'm going to be working over my color 1 as I work the 4 double crochet in color 2 that will continue the leg. And then, according to the chart, I am just going to crochet until I hit this second bobbin. Again, technically our first bobbin that we put in there, but who's to say? Those are very technical things. So I'm just going to make 6 more double crochet in color 1, and then switch back to color 2 for that leg, and then switch back to color 1, and then I think I'm just going to crochet color 1 until the end of the row, according to my chart. Yes, just color 1 until the end of the row. And then you can guess what we're going to do from here. You probably get the hang of it by now. And so I'm just going to crochet with color 1 to the end of this row, work my 4 border stitches, then chain 2 and turn, work my 4 border stitches, then crochet with color 1 until I hit these bobbins again for color 5, work what's on the chart, basically the exact same thing of what I just did with these 4 double crochet for each leg with the 6 double crochet in between, and crochet with color 1 for the rest of it, my border stitches, and then in row 6 I'm going to crochet with color 1 until I hit that, and then at that point I'll probably attach my big skein of the yarn for color 2 and then crochet until the rest of the row and then my border stitches, and you can totally get it from here. I'm just going to crochet until I have finished this entire chart. Remember to do your border stitches, remember to add on more bobbins as you go if you need them, and I will meet you back once we have finished the entire chart, and we will basically be done with our blanket. After we finish the chart, we only have 2 rows left, so that's pretty exciting. So I will meet you guys back once we have finished this whole thing. Alright guys, we did it! We finished the chart, very exciting. We only have 2 rows left. Congratulations on all the work you've done so far, and let's finish this out! So we are going to do our normal chain 2 and turn our work, and then what we're going to do, I'm going to do my normal border stitch on this side. We won't be needing to use this yarn after, so I'm just going to cut it right here and then crochet over that end as I go on for this row, pull my color 2 through, tie this yarn off, and then make your first double crochet and then your second double crochet as is normal, and then double crochet into every single stitch besides for the final 2. So I'm just going to place a double crochet to every single stitch with color 2, and I'm going to leave my 2 stitches at the end, and I'll meet you guys back whenever we only have 2 stitches left in this row. Alright, we are at the last couple stitches in our second to last row, so I'm going to crochet these stitches and I'm going to leave these 2. You might have a bobbin over here at that point. Mine personally ran out at a perfect time, so I'm going to reattach my big skein yarn over here, but if you have a bobbin, just continue to use that until it runs out. I'm going to attach that yarn, pull through, crochet over that end to work 2 double crochet in these final 2 stitches in color 1, and then it is time to start our last row at long last. Yay! So we are going to chain 2, then we are going to turn, and we won't be using color 2 at all in this one, so I am just going to cut this yarn so I have a little length to crochet over. Then I'm going to do my first double crochet, then pull that up, 2 crochet over it, then tie it to my working yarn, and then I'm just going to double crochet with color 1 into every single stitch. If you remember, this is what our first row was, making a double crochet of color 1 into every single chain, and so we are finishing our project in the exact same way. A beautiful full circle moment for us. Make a double crochet into every single stitch of color 1, and I will meet you guys back whenever we are fastening off and finishing this huge project. Alright guys, we are coming up on our last few stitches of the project. Just finish this row out very strong, doing your last few double crochet of color 1 in our final row, and then cut a little length of your yarn, then pull through, and you have finished your blanket. Yay! Very exciting. Congratulations on finishing this huge project. I hope if you're a beginner that it was legible and it went well and you feel a lot more confident about bobbins and color work and things like that. If you have any more ends to weave in, I know I do at the sides and things like that, then make sure to do those, but that shouldn't take too long because of the ways we were able to manage our color changes throughout this project. Please thoroughly enjoy this blanket. Please cozy up under it as much as you can, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Bye!